The great hall of the Galactic Council stretched as far as the eye could see. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy sat in curved rows that rose up like a giant bowl. The air hummed with translation devices working to help hundreds of different species understand each other. Some aliens breathed water, others needed toxic gases, and a few existed as pure energy. But they all came together here to make decisions that affected the entire galaxy. Ambassador Kira stepped forward to the speaking platform. Her blue skin sparkled under the bright lights, and her 4 arms moved gracefully as she began to speak. The Velthari were known for asking difficult questions, and today would be no different. "Fellow council members," Kira said, her voice carrying to every corner of the massive hall. "I wish to discuss a matter that has puzzled our people for 50 years. There is a region of space that concerns us all." A holographic star map appeared. Above the platform, billions of stars glowed like tiny diamonds against the dark background. Trade routes connected different systems with bright lines. Territory boundaries were marked in various colors, showing which species controlled which areas of space. But there was one region that stood out from all the others. A huge section of space, larger than most empires, was marked in deep red. The words floating above it were simple but frightening. Human territory, no entry, quarantine zone. Murmurs filled the hall. Every being present knew about this mysterious region, but few dared to speak about it openly. The humans joined our galactic community only 50 years ago, Kira continued. They came from a single world with basic technology and small ships. Yet somehow they were granted control over 200 star systems. This is more territory than species who have been part of our council for thousands of years. An alien with tentacles instead of arms raised one. Appendage. "The humans earned their territory through proper diplomatic channels," he said in a voice that sounded like bubbling water. "The council voted on it." "Yes," Kira replied. "But did we really understand what we were voting for? Has anyone here ever visited human space? Has anyone ever received trade goods from human worlds? Has anyone ever met a human outside of this council hall?" The silence that followed was uncomfortable. Many species sent explorers to new territories. They traded goods, shared technology, and built relationships with their neighbors. But human space remained completely closed to outsiders. Elder Hana stood up slowly from her seat near the front of the hall. The Zalari were the oldest known species in the galaxy, and their wisdom was respected by all. Her ancient voice carried clearly through the hall. "I have lived for 800 years, she said. "I have seen many species join our council. Some are peaceful, others are warlike. Some share freely, others keep secrets. But never have I seen a species claim territory and then completely cut themselves off from all contact." Another council member, a being made of living crystal, spoke up. "My people have sent 17 trade expeditions to human space over the past decades. None have returned. Not destroyed, not captured, simply gone. Our sensors detect the ships entering human territory and then nothing." "The same has happened to us," said a reptilian ambassador. "And to us?" added another. "And us." Soon, dozens of species were confirming the same story. Ships entered human space and disappeared without a trace. No distress calls, no wreckage, no survivors. It was as if they had simply stopped existing. "Perhaps," suggested a tall, thin alien with multiple eyes, "the humans are protecting something valuable. Rare minerals, advanced technology, or new worlds perfect for colonization." "Or perhaps," hissed a snake-like being, They are hiding something dangerous. Why else would they isolate themselves so completely? The debate continued for hours. Some council members thought the humans were just very private. Others believed they were hiding advanced weapons or planning something harmful. A few suggested that human space contained valuable resources that they wanted to keep for themselves. Finally, Ambassador Lee Jun-ho stood up from his seat in a quiet corner of the hall. The human representative was a middle-aged man with kind eyes and graying hair. He rarely spoke during council sessions, preferring to listen and observe. When he did speak, his words were always careful and polite. "Honored council members," Lee said, his voice calm and steady. "My people appreciate your curiosity about our territory. However, I must respectfully ask that you continue to honor the boundaries we have established. They exist for very good reasons." "What reasons?" demanded Kira. "Why can't you simply tell us what you're protecting or hiding?" Lee was quiet for a long moment. His expression seemed sad, as if he carried a heavy burden. "Some knowledge is dangerous to share," he said, finally. "Some truths are better left unknown. We have marked our territory clearly and asked for nothing more than to be left alone. Is this not a reasonable request?" "No species should be allowed to claim such vast territory without explanation," declared a military commander from the warrior Corvin Empire. "If the humans have nothing to hide, they should allow inspections." Other voices joined in agreement. The council had grown suspicious of human secrecy. Trade was the foundation of galactic civilization. Closed borders made everyone nervous. Elder Hana raised her hand for silence. "Perhaps it is time for a formal investigation," she said thoughtfully. "Not as conquerors or invaders, but as concerned neighbors. A joint expedition with representatives from multiple species. Surely the humans cannot object to a peaceful scientific mission." The idea gained support quickly. Council members began discussing which species should participate and what kind of ships they should send. The excitement in the hall was obvious. Finally, they would solve the mystery of human space. Ambassador Lee stood again, his face pale. "Please," he said, his voice carrying a note of urgency that surprised many council members. "I strongly advise against this course of action. The boundaries exist for everyone's protection, not just our own." "Protection from what?" asked Kira. Lee hesitated, as if struggling with how much to reveal. "There are things in this universe that are better left undisturbed," he said quietly. "My people have taken responsibility for ensuring they remain that way." His words sent a chill through the hall, but they also increased curiosity rather than reducing it. What could the humans possibly be guarding? What threats could exist that required such extreme secrecy? The vote was unanimous. A joint expedition would be organized to explore human territory and discover the truth behind the galaxy's greatest mystery. Representatives from the most powerful species in the council would lead the mission, bringing their best ships and most advanced technology. As the council session ended and beings began filing out of the Great Hall, Ambassador Lee remained in his seat. He stared at the holographic star map, his expression filled with worry and regret. He had tried to warn them, but they would not listen. He activated a small communication device and spoke a few quiet words in his native language. Somewhere in the depths of human space, preparations would begin. The secret that humanity had, guarded for 50 years, was about to be discovered, and Lee feared the consequences would be more terrible than the galaxy could imagine. 3 weeks after the council vote, ships began gathering at the edge of human territory. The assembly point was a massive space station called Unity Port, built specifically for multi-species operations. The station buzzed with activity as different alien races worked together to prepare for the historic expedition. Captain Yuki of the Corvan Empire stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest. The massive dreadnought was over 2 kilometers long and carried enough firepower to level a small moon. Its black hull was covered with weapon ports and sensor arrays that could detect enemies from incredible distances. The Corvan were a proud warrior race, and their ships reflected their aggressive nature. "Status report," Yuki commanded, his scarred face stern as always. The Corvan looked similar to humans, but were taller and stronger, with skin that had a slight metallic sheen. "All weapon systems ready, Captain," reported his second-in-command. "Shield generators at full power. Our fleet of 50 battle cruisers is prepared for combat." Yuki nodded with satisfaction. Whatever the humans were hiding, the Corvan Empire was ready for a fight. On another part of the station, Commander Nari prepared her own ships. The Mindari Collective was different from other species. They were telepathic beings who could read thoughts and communicate without speaking. Nari's pale blue skin seemed to glow softly, and her large eyes reflected the wisdom of her people. Her ships were sleek and graceful, designed more for reconnaissance than combat. The Mindari fleet specialized in gathering information and understanding. Their enemies before any fighting began. Their telepathic abilities made them excellent spies and negotiators. "Can you sense anything from human space?" asked her aide, another Mindari with similar features. Nari closed her eyes and reached out with her mind, trying to detect thoughts or emotions from the mysterious region beyond their current position. After several minutes, she opened her eyes with a troubled expression. "Nothing," she said quietly. "It's as if that entire region of space is empty of all intelligent life. But that can't be right. We know humans live there." Her aide looked concerned. The Mindari had never encountered a species they couldn't read telepathically. Even aggressive races like the Corvan had minds that could be sensed and understood. But human space felt like a complete void. Admiral Tae-min worked frantically in the science section of the station. The Nexari Union prided itself on having the most advanced technology in the galaxy. Their ships could bend space and time, create artificial gravity fields, and analyze matter at the atomic level. If anyone could solve the mystery of human territory, it would be the Nexari. "Have you completed the analysis of the boundary zone?" Tae-min asked his chief scientist. The Nexari were tall, thin beings with large heads and multiple arms that allowed them to operate complex equipment. "Yes, Admiral," the scientist replied, reviewing data on a holographic display. "The border of human space shows unusual energy. Readings. There are gravitational anomalies and electromagnetic distortions that don't match any known natural phenomena." Could these be defensive systems? Tae-min wondered aloud. Possibly. Or they could be side effects of whatever technology the humans are using inside their territory. Our sensors detect strange patterns that suggest massive construction projects or industrial operations. Tae-min made notes on his datapad. The Nexari expedition would focus on understanding the technology behind human secrecy. Their reality-bending science vessels would be able to penetrate any defensive systems the primitive humans might have created. General Su Young stood in the Military Planning Center, studying tactical displays with her officers. The Braxi clans were legendary warriors, known throughout the galaxy for their fierce fighting spirit and unbreakable honor code. They were shorter than humans, but much stronger, with tough skin that could resist small weapons and claws that could tear through metal. "How many ships have we committed to this expedition?" Su Young asked her battle coordinator. 75 warships, General. Each one carries a full complement of Braxy warriors ready for ground combat if necessary. Su Young smiled, showing teeth that were sharper than a human's. The humans may have kept their secrets for 50 years, but no species can stand against the combined might of the galaxy's greatest powers. Her officers cheered in agreement. The Braxy had never lost a war, and they didn't plan to start now. The days passed. More ships arrived at Unity Port. Each species brought their most advanced vessels and elite crews. Soon, over 500 ships filled the space around the station. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. The expedition commanders met regularly to plan their approach. They divided human space into sections, with each species responsible for exploring different areas. The Corvin would provide military strength, the Mindari would gather intelligence, the Nexari would analyze technology, and the Braxy would handle any ground operations. "We should approach with caution," suggested Commander Nari during one planning session. "My people still cannot detect any mines in human space. This is very unusual and could indicate unknown dangers." Captain Yuki disagreed. "Caution is for species that lack proper weapons. We have enough firepower to defeat any human fleet they might have hidden in their territory." "But what if they have technology we don't understand?" asked Admiral Tamin. "The energy readings from their border suggest capabilities beyond anything we've seen before." General Su Young slammed her fist on the table. "Then we'll study their technology after we defeat them in battle. No species keeps secrets from the galactic community without consequences." Despite their different approaches, all 4 commanders agreed on one thing: they would finally learn the truth about human territory. The combined expedition had enough ships and soldiers to conquer a dozen star systems. Whatever the humans were hiding couldn't possibly stand against such overwhelming force. On the final day before departure, Ambassador Lee Jun-ho arrived at Unity Port. The human diplomat requested a meeting with the expedition commanders, hoping to make one last attempt to stop them from entering his people's space. The 5 beings met in a secure conference room aboard the station. Lee looked tired and worried as he faced the alien commanders who would soon invade his territory. "I beg you to reconsider this mission," Lee said, his voice filled with genuine concern. "The boundaries around human space exist for very important reasons. If you enter our territory, you may discover things that will change your understanding of the universe forever." "Is that a threat?" demanded Captain Yuki, his hand moving toward his weapon. "No," Lee replied sadly. "It's a warning. There are forces in this galaxy that your species have never encountered. My people have taken responsibility for containing these forces and keeping them away from civilized worlds." "What kind of forces?" asked Commander Nari, her telepathic abilities still unable to read the human's thoughts. Lee hesitated, as if deciding how much he could safely reveal. "Ancient things," he said finally. "Things that existed before your civilizations, before your worlds, before life itself spread throughout the galaxy. They are contained now, but that containment requires constant vigilance." Admiral Tamin laughed. "You're talking about fairy tales and myths. The Nexari have explored this galaxy for thousands of years. We know what exists and what doesn't." "You?" Lee asked quietly. "Have you explored every dimension? Every layer of reality? Have you looked beyond the space between stars?" His questions made the alien commanders uncomfortable, but they refused to be intimidated by human mystery-making. General Su Young stood up, ending the meeting. We appreciate your concern, Ambassador, but the decision has been made. Tomorrow, we enter human space and discover the truth. Lee nodded slowly, accepting defeat. Then I pray that truth doesn't destroy us all, he said as he left the room. The next morning, 500 ships left Unity Port and headed toward the red boundary on their star charts. The greatest expedition in galactic history was about to enter human territory and solve the mystery that had puzzled the galaxy for 50 years. None of them suspected that they were flying toward a revelation that would change everything they thought they knew about the universe. The moment the expedition crossed into human territory, every sensor array in the fleet activated. 500 ships spread out in formation, their crews alert and ready for anything. But what they found surprised them all. "This is not what I expected," Captain Yuki muttered as he studied the displays on his bridge. Instead of defensive positions or hidden weapons, the first human system looked almost peaceful. 3 beautiful planets orbited a bright yellow star, their surfaces covered with blue oceans and green continents. Space stations hung in orbit like jewels, their lights twinkling against the darkness. "I'm detecting mining operations in the asteroid belt," reported his sensor officer. "Standard industrial equipment, nothing threatening. There are also several cargo ships moving between the planets." Commander Neri felt equally confused. Her telepathic abilities still couldn't detect any human minds, which was strange, but the system itself seemed harmless. "Perhaps we were wrong about the humans," she told her crew. "Maybe they simply value privacy more than other species." Admiral Taemin was busy analyzing the energy readings from the human installations. "Interesting," he murmured. "Their technology is more advanced than I expected, but nothing that seems dangerous. I'm detecting power sources that are quite efficient, and their space stations use materials I don't recognize." General Su Young was almost disappointed. She had prepared her warriors for a great battle, but this looked like any other peaceful star system. "Continue scanning," she ordered. "There must be something here that explains why the humans are so secretive." The expedition moved deeper into human space, jumping from system to system. Each one looked similar to the first. Well-developed worlds with thriving colonies, efficient mining operations, and regular cargo traffic. The humans seemed to have built a remarkably successful civilization in just 50 years. But as they penetrated further into the territory, strange things began to happen. It started small. Ships reported minor technical difficulties that their engineers couldn't explain. Navigation systems would show incorrect readings for a few seconds before returning to normal. Weapons targeting computers would lock onto empty space as if detecting enemies that weren't there. "Captain," the Corvin sensor officer called out, worry clear in his voice. "I'm reading something unusual. Our navigation computer just calculated our position as being in 3 different locations at the same time." Yuki frowned. "Run a diagnostic on all systems." "Already did, sir. Everything checks out perfectly, but the readings are still wrong." Similar reports came from other ships in the fleet. Mindari vessels experienced problems with their telepathic communication systems. Nexari science ships detected energy signatures that appeared and disappeared without explanation. Braxi warriors reported feeling watched, even though their sensors showed no other ships nearby. Commander Neri began to feel genuinely worried when her telepaths started reporting disturbing experiences. The most sensitive members of her crew claimed to hear whispers in languages they didn't recognize. Others said they could sense vast intelligences watching the fleet from impossible distances. "Commander," her chief telepath said, his face pale and frightened. Something is very wrong here. I'm detecting thoughts, but they're not coming from any direction I can identify. It's as if the thoughts are coming from everywhere at once. What kind of thoughts? Nari asked. I can't understand them. They're too alien, too different from anything we've encountered before. But they feel ancient, and they feel aware of us. Admiral Taemin was having his own problems. His science vessels were designed to analyze and understand any technology they encountered, but the readings from human space made no sense at all. Structures appeared on sensors that shouldn't be able to exist according to known physics. Admiral, his chief scientist reported, I'm detecting construction on a scale that defies explanation. Some of these installations appear to be larger than planets, but they're somehow existing in spaces too small to contain them. That's impossible, Taemin replied. Yes, sir, it should be. But the readings are consistent across all our sensors. Either our equipment is malfunctioning or the humans have access to technology that can manipulate space itself. General Su Young's warriors were becoming increasingly agitated. The Braxi were natural fighters with excellent instincts for danger, and those instincts were screaming warnings. Many of her soldiers reported feeling as if they were being studied by unseen enemies. General, her second-in-command said quietly, the troops are getting nervous. They can't see any threats, but they all feel like they're walking into a trap. I feel it too, Su Young admitted. But we haven't encountered any hostile forces. Keep the warriors alert, but don't let fear control our mission. The most disturbing discovery came when the fleet tried to map their route through human space. According to their navigation systems, they should have traveled through 12-star systems in the past 3 days. But when they looked back at their path, they could only account for 5 systems. How is this possible? Captain Yuki demanded of his navigation officer. Are we lost? No, sir. We know exactly where we are. But the route we took to get here doesn't match what our computers recorded. It's as if we traveled through systems that don't exist. Commander Nari's telepaths were becoming more disturbed with each passing hour. 3 of them had already collapsed from mental strain, babbling about watchers in the void and the spaces between spaces. The ship's medical officer could find nothing physically wrong with them, but their minds seemed to have been overwhelmed by something beyond their ability to comprehend. Perhaps we should turn back, Nari suggested during a conference call with the other commanders. My people are suffering, and we still haven't found any answers. Absolutely not, Captain Yuki responded firmly. We came here to discover the truth about human territory. We won't retreat just because of some sensor malfunctions and nervous crew members. Admiral Tae-min was torn between scientific curiosity and growing concern. The technology readings he was getting suggested that human space contained wonders beyond imagination, but they also hinted at dangers his people had never encountered. I agree with continuing the mission, he said finally, but we should proceed with extreme caution. Whatever the humans have built here, it's far more sophisticated than we initially believed. General Su Young was frustrated by the invisible nature of the threats her warriors were sensing. My soldiers are ready to fight any enemy, she declared. But how do you battle something you can't see or understand? As the expedition moved deeper into human territory, the anomalies became more frequent and more severe. Ships began changing course without their crews issuing any commands, as if something external was guiding them. Several vessels reported, seeing structures that appeared and disappeared so quickly that they wondered if they were hallucinations. The most unsettling moment came when the entire fleet suddenly stopped moving. Not because their engines failed, but because space itself seemed to have become solid around them. For 10 terrifying minutes, 500 ships hung motionless in the void, trapped by forces beyond their understanding. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the phenomenon ended. The ships could move freely again, but none of the fleet's scientists could explain what had happened. "We're not just traveling through human space," Admiral Taman said during another emergency conference. "We're traveling through something that's been built around human space. The entire region has been modified in ways that shouldn't be possible." "Modified for what purpose?" asked Commander Nari. "I don't know," Taman admitted. "But whatever the humans have done here, it operates according to principles that our science can't begin to explain." The expedition pressed on, driven by curiosity and stubborn determination. They had come too far to turn back now, despite the increasing strangeness of their surroundings. But each jump deeper into human territory brought new mysteries and new reasons to fear what they might eventually discover. Behind them, the path they had traveled seemed to shimmer and shift, as if reality itself was watching their progress and adjusting to their presence. The galaxy's greatest military expedition was no longer just exploring human space. They were being guided somewhere specific by forces they couldn't see or understand. After 5 days of traveling through increasingly strange space, the expedition finally encountered their first actual human vessel. It appeared on their sensors suddenly, as if it had materialized out of nothing. The ship was small compared to the massive alien warships, looking more like a simple transport than a military vessel. Captain Yuki immediately moved his flagship into position, surrounding the human ship with dozens of Corvan battlecruisers. "Unknown vessel. This is Captain Yuki of the Galactic Council expedition. You will halt immediately and prepare to be boarded for inspection." The response came quickly. A middle-aged human man appeared on their communication screens. He had kind eyes and graying hair, and he wore a simple blue uniform without any military decorations. His calm expression seemed oddly peaceful considering he was facing the largest military force in galactic history. "Greetings," the human said politely. "I am Captain Wu Jin of the transport vessel Gentle Current. May I ask why such a large fleet has entered sovereign human space without permission?" Admiral Taman activated his own communications. "We are here on official business from the Galactic Council. Your people have maintained closed borders for 50 years. The Council has decided that an investigation is necessary." Captain Wu Jin nodded slowly, as if he had been expecting this day to come. "I see. And what exactly are you hoping to investigate?" "We want to know what you're hiding in here," General Su Young declared bluntly. "No species claims this much. Territory without good reason. What are you protecting?" The human captain was quiet for a long moment, and his expression grew sad. "We tried to warn you," he said softly. "Ambassador Lee asked the Council to respect our boundaries. He told you there were good reasons for the quarantine zone." "What reasons?" Commander Nari demanded. Her telepathic abilities still couldn't penetrate the human's mind, which frustrated her greatly. "We have the right to know what's happening in our own galaxy." Captain Wu Jin sighed deeply. "You really should have listened to Ambassador Lee," he said. "We genuinely didn't want anyone to see this." Before any of the alien commanders could respond, something impossible began to happen. The empty space around the expedition started to change. What had appeared to be normal vacuum suddenly shimmered and shifted, like a curtain being pulled aside. Massive structures began to phase into reality around the fleet. They weren't ships in any conventional sense, but constructions so vast that they dwarfed entire planets. The alien crews watched in stunned silence as installations the size of moons materialized from nothing, their surfaces covered with patterns of light that hurt to look at directly. "What? What is this?" whispered Captain Yuki, his warriors, confidence shaken for the first time in his career. The space between the stars began to fold and twist, revealing mechanical ecosystems that had been hidden in dimensions the aliens couldn't even perceive. Structures that should have been impossible appeared and disappeared, existing in multiple layers of reality simultaneously. Admiral Taman's science vessels went into overload, trying to analyze what they were seeing. "This can't be real," he muttered, staring at readings that made no scientific sense. "Matter doesn't behave this way. Space doesn't work like this." Commander Nari's remaining telepaths began screaming. The mental pressure from whatever intelligence controlled these structures was overwhelming their minds. Several more of her crew collapsed, their consciousness unable to process the alien geometry surrounding them. "You're not traveling through empty space," Captain Wu Jin explained gently, his voice somehow carrying clearly despite the chaos erupting around the expedition. "You've been moving through the interior of something much larger, something that has been watching you since the moment you crossed our border." General Su Young's warriors were panicking. Their instincts had been warning them for days, but nothing could have prepared them for this revelation. They weren't exploring human territory. They were inside some kind of massive construct that defied everything they thought they knew about the universe. "This is impossible," Captain Yuki said, though his voice lacked conviction. "No species could build something this large. It would take millions of years and resources from hundreds of star systems." "You're right," Captain Wu Jin agreed. "It did take enormous resources and careful planning, but we didn't build it in the way you're thinking." The human ship moved closer to the expedition fleet, completely ignoring the weapons pointed at it from every direction. As it approached, the alien crews could see that it wasn't quite solid in the way they expected. Parts of the vessel seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once, shifting between different states of reality. "What you're seeing around you is called the Aegis Protocol," Wu Jin continued. "It's not a collection of separate installations. It's a single integrated system that spans multiple dimensions and realities." Admiral Taman found his scientific voice again. "That's impossible. No species has the technology to manipulate space-time on this scale." "We do," the human captain said simply, "because we had to learn. The entire territory you call human space isn't really space at all. It's a machine, and every star system you've seen is a component in that machine." The implications of his words began to sink in. The beautiful planets they had observed weren't natural worlds where humans lived. They were processing centers. The space stations weren't homes or research facilities. They were monitoring posts. Even the stars themselves had been artificially created and positioned with mathematical precision. "A machine for what purpose?" Commander Nari asked, though part of her mind already feared the answer. Captain Wu Jin's expression became even more grave. "Protection," he said, "but not in the way you think. We're not keeping something inside our territory. We're keeping something outside." The alien commanders felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature on their ships. Around them, the massive structures of the Aegis Protocol continued to phase in and out of normal space, revealing glimpses of construction projects that spanned entire solar systems. "Outside from what?" General Su Young demanded. The human captain looked directly at each of the expedition commanders, and for the first time, they could see fear in his eyes. Not fear of their weapons or their threats, but fear of something far worse. There are things that exist beyond the boundaries of normal space and time, he said quietly. Ancient entities that are hostile to all forms of biological life. They exist in the spaces between realities, always searching for ways to enter our universe. He paused, choosing his words carefully. The quarantine zone around human territory isn't meant to keep other species out. It's meant to keep those entities from getting in. The Aegis Protocol is a prison built around our entire region of space, designed to contain forces that could destroy all life in the galaxy. The revelation hit the expedition like a physical blow. Humanity wasn't hiding superior technology or claiming valuable resources. They were standing guard against threats that existed beyond the comprehension of other species. And now, Captain Wu Jin continued, his voice filled with regret, by bringing 500 ships deep into the heart of the Aegis Protocol, your expedition has compromised the integrity of the entire system. As if his words were a signal, alarms began sounding throughout the human construct. The massive installations surrounding the fleet started pulsing with urgent light patterns. In the distance, reality itself began to buckle and twist as something pressed against the weakened barriers. "What have we done?" whispered Admiral Tae Min. Captain Wu Jin activated emergency communications to installations throughout human space. His calm demeanor was replaced by urgent efficiency as he coordinated responses to the crisis the expedition had accidentally triggered. The entities beyond our reality are drawn to large concentrations of life and consciousness, he explained. While working, your fleet's energy signatures and telepathic emanations have attracted their attention. They're testing the barriers now, looking for weak points they can exploit. Through the transparent sections of their ships, the alien crews could see space, itself beginning to deteriorate. Colors that didn't exist in normal physics bled through cracks in reality. Shadows moved independently of any light source, and the stars themselves seemed to flicker like dying candles. The expedition had come to human space seeking answers to a mystery. Instead, they had discovered that humanity had been quietly protecting the galaxy from horrors beyond imagination, and their arrival had compromised that protection just when it was needed most. Captain Wu Jin worked frantically at his ship's controls, sending messages to installations throughout human space. The alien commanders watched in growing horror as the reality around them continued to deteriorate. Cracks appeared in the fabric of space itself, and through those cracks, something impossible was trying to push through. "I need to explain quickly," Wu Jin said, his calm voice now urgent. "Your lives depend on understanding what you've stumbled into." Admiral Tae Min's scientific mind struggled to process what he was seeing. "The readings are impossible," he muttered. "Space-time is behaving like it's alive." "In a sense it is," the human captain replied while coordinating emergency responses. "What you call human territory doesn't contain 200 star systems. We built 200 star systems from scratch, each one a component in the Aegis Protocol." General Su Young's warriors were barely keeping control as reality warped around them. "You're saying you created entire solar systems, not in the way you're thinking," Wu Jin explained. "We didn't move planets or build artificial worlds. We created pocket dimensions and folded them into normal space. Every star you've seen, every planet you've detected, every space station you've observed, they're all part of a single massive construct designed for one purpose." Commander Nari's remaining telepaths were curled up in corners, whimpering about voices in the darkness. "What purpose?" she asked, though her voice shook with fear. Captain Wu Jin paused in his work to look directly at her. To keep the devourers contained. The name sent a chill through every alien present. It sounded ancient and terrible, like something from the darkest nightmares of primitive civilizations. The devourers are entities that exist in the spaces between realities, Wu Jin continued. They're older than galaxies, older than stars, older than the concept of time itself. They exist in a state of constant hunger, consuming everything they encounter. Matter, energy, consciousness, even the laws of physics that hold the universe together. Captain Yuki's warrior training helped him focus, despite the chaos around them. If they're so dangerous, how do you know about them? Because humanity encountered them long before we achieved spaceflight, Wu Jin replied. They've been trying to break into our reality for millions of years, testing different entry points throughout the galaxy. Most species that encounter them are consumed before they can even understand what's happening. The human captain activated a holographic display showing the galaxy from a perspective the aliens had never seen. Instead of just stars and planets, it revealed hidden layers of reality where dark shapes pressed against the boundaries of normal space. The devourers can sense life, especially intelligent life. The more complex the consciousness, the more attractive it becomes to them. Large gatherings of different species, like your expedition, create a psychic beacon that draws their attention from incredible distances. Admiral Taemin stared at the display in horror. Are you saying they're attracted to diversity, to cooperation between species? Among other things, yes. The Galactic Council itself is like a bright light in the darkness to them. Every time your species work together, every time you share knowledge or trade resources, you create exactly the kind of signals that help them locate entry points into our reality. The implications were staggering, the very foundation of galactic civilization. Cooperation between different species was exactly what made them vulnerable to these ancient predators. But humanity found a way to fight them? Commander Nari asked hopefully. Captain Wu Jin's expression grew even more grim. Not fight them, contain them. The devourers can't be destroyed because they don't exist in the same way we do. They're concepts given form, ideas that have become hungry. You can't kill an idea, but you can build walls around it. Around the expedition, the massive installations of the Aegis Protocol were working desperately to reinforce the barriers that kept the devourers at bay. The alien crews could see energy patterns flowing between structures that existed in multiple dimensions, simultaneously. Every human colony, every space station, every technological advancement we've made has been designed with this single purpose in mind, Wu Jin explained. We don't have cities in the way other species do. We have monitoring posts. We don't have trade routes. We have patrol paths. We don't have separate military and civilian populations. Every human is part of the containment system. General Su Young's mind reeled at the implications. Your entire civilization is built around this threat. Our entire species exists to address this threat, Wu Jin corrected. When humanity first detected the devourers pressing against reality near our home system, we had a choice. We could ignore the problem and hope it went away, or we could take responsibility for protecting not just ourselves, but all life in the galaxy. Captain Yuki found his voice again. You chose to stand guard. We chose to stand guard, Wu Jin confirmed. But the cost has been enormous. Every human alive knows that they might be called upon to sacrifice their life to maintain the barriers. Every human family understands that their children will inherit this burden. Every human city is built ready to be abandoned if necessary to prevent a containment breach. The revelation explained so much about human behavior that had puzzled the galaxy. Their reluctance to engage in trade wasn't because they were selfish. They couldn't risk drawing attention to their real activities. Their closed borders weren't meant to hide valuable resources. They were meant to hide the fact that human space was actually a prison containing the galaxy's greatest threat. The beautiful worlds we saw when we entered your territory, Admiral, Taemin said slowly. They're not really colonies, are they? Processing centers, Wu Jin confirmed. They analyze dimensional stress patterns and coordinate responses to containment breaches. The mining operations you detected aren't extracting minerals. They're harvesting exotic matter needed to maintain the barriers between realities. Commander Nari felt sick as she understood the true scope of humanity's sacrifice. And the cargo, ships we saw? Emergency response teams moving between monitoring stations and reinforcing weak points in the containment grid. What looks like normal commerce is actually a constant battle to prevent universal extinction. Around them, the space continued to deteriorate as the Devourers pressed against the weakened barriers. The expedition's large fleet and diverse crew had created exactly the kind of psychic signature that attracted the entity's attention, and their presence deep within the Aegis Protocol had given the Devourers their best chance in decades to break through into normal reality. "How long have you been fighting this battle?" General Su Young asked. Captain Wu Jin checked his emergency communications before answering. 53 years, 4 months, and 16 days. Since the moment we first made contact with the galactic community and realized that our local containment efforts needed to be expanded to protect other species. The timing matched exactly with humanity's first appearance at the Galactic Council. They hadn't joined galactic civilization to benefit from trade and cooperation. They had revealed themselves because they needed the resources and territory to build a prison large enough to contain threats that could destroy the entire galaxy. "And now we've compromised everything," Captain Yuki said, his warrior's pride replaced by shame. "Not everything," Captain Wu Jin replied, though his expression remained grim. "The Aegis Protocol has redundant systems and backup barriers. But your expedition has given the Devourers their best opportunity in decades to break free. If they succeed in creating even a small breach, they'll spread throughout the galaxy faster than any conventional force could stop them." The alien commanders finally understood why Ambassador Lee had been so desperate to prevent their expedition. It wasn't just human privacy at stake. It was the survival of every living thing in the galaxy. And now, deep within the most sophisticated prison ever constructed, the galaxy's most ancient enemies were pressing against barriers that had been weakened by the very species they were built to protect. The first sign that something was terribly wrong came when Commander Nari's telepaths began screaming in perfect unison. Their minds, already strained by days of exposure to the alien geometry of human space, suddenly detected something that drove them to the edge of madness. "They're coming!" gasped the chief telepath, blood trickling from his nose. "The hungry ones, the cold math that devours light. They're pressing against the walls, and the walls are breaking." Captain Wu Jin's fingers flew over his controls as alarms sounded throughout the human construct. "All stations, we have a level 9 containment breach in Sector 7. The barriers are failing faster than we anticipated. Around the expedition, fleet." Reality began to buckle in ways that hurt to observe. Space folded in on itself, creating impossible angles that the alien crew's eyes couldn't properly process. Time started flowing in different directions simultaneously, causing some ships to experience moments that happened before they began. Admiral Taemin watched his instruments with growing horror as they registered readings that violated every law of physics he understood. "Temperature is dropping below absolute zero," he reported, his voice barely steady. "But it's not cold in the normal sense. It's the absence of the concept of heat." Through the viewports of their ships, the alien crews began to see things that shouldn't exist. Shadows moved independently of any light source, growing longer and darker until they seemed to reach across impossible distances. The stars themselves began to flicker and dim, as if something was slowly consuming the light they produced. General Su Young's warriors, trained for battle against any enemy, found themselves facing something that their weapons couldn't touch, and their minds couldn't fully comprehend. "What are we fighting?" she demanded. "How do you battle something that exists between realities?" "You don't fight them directly," Captain Wu Jin replied, while coordinating emergency responses across the human construct. "The Devourers exist as living concepts. They're the idea of hunger given form, the notion of emptiness made real. You can't destroy an idea with conventional weapons." One of the expedition ships, a Corvan battlecruiser, suddenly aged 1,000 years in the span of seconds. Its hull crumbled to dust while its crew watched in helpless terror. The ship's final transmission was a single word repeated over and over. "Hungry, hungry, hungry!" Captain Yuki felt his warrior's courage falter as he watched one of his finest vessels simply cease to exist. "How many of these things are there?" "We don't know," Wu Jin admitted. "They don't exist as individual entities in the way we understand. They're more like aspects of a single vast intelligence that spans multiple dimensions. Think of them as fingers of a hand that reaches through the spaces between realities." Commander Nari's remaining telepaths were curled up in medical bays, their minds broken by contact with intelligence so alien that it had shattered their ability to think coherently. The few who could still speak babbled about the mathematics of despair and equations that solve for nothing. "My telepaths are detecting something approaching," Nari reported. "But they say it's not moving through space. It's moving through the concept of distance itself." The human installations throughout the region began working with desperate efficiency. Massive structures that had been hidden in parallel dimensions suddenly became fully visible as they diverted all available power to reinforcing the containment barriers. "Every human settlement in this sector is preparing for emergency protocols," Wu Jin explained. "If the barriers fail completely, entire colonies will sacrifice themselves to prevent the Devourers from spreading beyond this region." Admiral Tae Min's scientific mind struggled to process what he was witnessing. "The energy readings are off the charts. How much power does it take to contain these entities?" "More than you can imagine," Captain Wu Jin replied. "The Aegis Protocol consumes the entire output of 17 artificial stars just to maintain basic containment. During a crisis like this, we have to overload systems that were designed to last for thousands of years." Around them, space began to tear like fabric. Through the gaps, the alien crews caught glimpses of something that existed beyond the normal universe. A realm of living darkness where impossible geometries twisted through dimensions that had no names. The Devourers themselves began to manifest at the edges of perception. They weren't creatures in any conventional sense, but rather absences in reality where the laws of physics simply stopped working. Where they touched normal space, matter began to unravel at the atomic level. "They're not trying to enter our reality," Captain Wu Jin said with growing alarm. "They're trying to expand their own reality to include ours. If they succeed, the entire galaxy will become part of their domain." General Su Young watched in horror as another ship in the expedition simply vanished. Not destroyed, not damaged, It ceased to have ever existed. The crew's families back home would never remember them, because the Devourers didn't just consume matter and energy. They consumed history itself. "How long can your barriers hold?" she asked. "Under normal circumstances, indefinitely," Wu Jin replied. "But your expedition created a massive psychic beacon that attracted their attention. 500 ships with diverse crews from multiple species. It's exactly the kind of signal that helps them locate weak points in our containment." The irony was devastating. The galaxy's greatest cooperative effort had become the thing that might destroy them all. Captain Yuki's remaining ships tried to withdraw from the danger zone, but space around them had become unstable. Navigation was impossible when the concept of direction kept changing. Several vessels found themselves traveling backward through time, emerging from jumps before they had begun them. "We need to evacuate the expedition immediately," Admiral Taemin said. "Get them away from the containment breach." "It's too late for that," Captain Wu Jin replied grimly. "The Devourers have locked onto your fleet's psychic signature. Even if we could get you out of human space, they would follow that signal back to the rest of the galaxy." The implications were clear. The expedition had become a beacon for humanity's greatest enemies. As long as the alien fleet existed, the Devourers would have a path to follow into the populated regions of the galaxy. Commander Nari understood. First, "You're saying we can't leave?" "I'm saying that leaving now would doom every inhabited world in the galaxy," Wu Jin confirmed. "The Devourers are patient. They'll follow your trail through hyperspace, consuming everything they encounter along the way. By the time they reach the galactic core, there won't be any civilizations left to warn." Around the expedition, human forces began deploying weapons and technologies that operated on principles the alien crews had never imagined. They weren't fighting the Devourers with energy beams or kinetic projectiles. Instead, they were manipulating the fundamental structures of reality itself, creating new laws of physics in local regions of space. The battle that was beginning wouldn't be fought with conventional tactics. It would be a struggle to determine what was real and what was possible, with the fate of every living thing in the galaxy hanging in the balance. And at the center of it all, 500 alien ships found themselves trapped in a war between forces so vast that their very existence had become a weapon that could either save the galaxy or destroy it. The first sign that something was terribly wrong came when Commander Nari's telepaths began screaming in perfect unison. Their minds, already strained by days of exposure to the alien geometry of human space, suddenly detected something that drove them to the edge of madness. "They're coming!" gasped the chief telepath, blood trickling from his nose. "The hungry ones, the cold math that devours light. They're pressing against the walls, and the walls are breaking." Captain Wu Jin's fingers flew over his controls as alarms sounded throughout the human construct. "All stations, we have a level 9 containment breach in Sector 7. The barriers are failing faster than we anticipated. Around the expedition, fleet." Reality began to buckle in ways that hurt to observe. Space folded in on itself, creating impossible angles that the alien crew's eyes couldn't properly process. Time started flowing in different directions simultaneously, causing some ships to experience moments that happened before they began. Admiral Taemin watched his instruments with growing horror as they registered readings that violated every law of physics he understood. "Temperature is dropping below absolute zero," he reported, his voice barely steady. "But it's not cold in the normal sense. It's the absence of the concept of heat." Through the viewports of their ships, the alien crews began to see things that shouldn't exist. Shadows moved independently of any light source, growing longer and darker until they seemed to reach across impossible distances. The stars themselves began to flicker and dim, as if something was slowly consuming the light they produced. General Su Young's warriors, trained for battle against any enemy, found themselves facing something that their weapons couldn't touch, and their minds couldn't fully comprehend. "What are we fighting?" she demanded. "How do you battle something that exists between realities?" "You don't fight them directly," Captain Wu Jin replied, while coordinating emergency responses across the human construct. "The Devourers exist as living concepts. They're the idea of hunger given form, the notion of emptiness made real. You can't destroy an idea with conventional weapons." One of the expedition ships, a Corvan battlecruiser, suddenly aged 1,000 years in the span of seconds. Its hull crumbled to dust while its crew watched in helpless terror. The ship's final transmission was a single word repeated over and over. "Hungry, hungry, hungry!" Captain Yuki felt his warrior's courage falter as he watched one of his finest vessels simply cease to exist. "How many of these things are there?" "We don't know," Wu Jin admitted. "They don't exist as individual entities in the way we understand. They're more like aspects of a single vast intelligence that spans multiple dimensions. Think of them as fingers of a hand that reaches through the spaces between realities." Commander Nari's remaining telepaths were curled up in medical bays, their minds broken by contact with intelligence so alien that it had shattered their ability to think coherently. The few who could still speak babbled about the mathematics of despair and equations that solve for nothing. "My telepaths are detecting something approaching," Nari reported. "But they say it's not moving through space. It's moving through the concept of distance itself." The human installations throughout the region began working with desperate efficiency. Massive structures that had been hidden in parallel dimensions suddenly became fully visible as they diverted all available power to reinforcing the containment barriers. "Every human settlement in this sector is preparing for emergency protocols," Wu Jin explained. "If the barriers fail completely, entire colonies will sacrifice themselves to prevent the Devourers from spreading beyond this region." Admiral Tae Min's scientific mind struggled to process what he was witnessing. "The energy readings are off the charts. How much power does it take to contain these entities?" "More than you can imagine," Captain Wu Jin replied. "The Aegis Protocol consumes the entire output of 17 artificial stars just to maintain basic containment. During a crisis like this, we have to overload systems that were designed to last for thousands of years." Around them, space began to tear like fabric. Through the gaps, the alien crews caught glimpses of something that existed beyond the normal universe. A realm of living darkness where impossible geometries twisted through dimensions that had no names. The Devourers themselves began to manifest at the edges of perception. They weren't creatures in any conventional sense, but rather absences in reality where the laws of physics simply stopped working. Where they touched normal space, matter began to unravel at the atomic level. "They're not trying to enter our reality," Captain Wu Jin said with growing alarm. "They're trying to expand their own reality to include ours. If they succeed, the entire galaxy will become part of their domain." General Su Young watched in horror as another ship in the expedition simply vanished. Not destroyed, not damaged, it ceased to have ever existed. The crew's families back home would never remember them, because the Devourers didn't just consume matter and energy. They consumed history itself. "How long can your barriers hold?" she asked. "Under normal circumstances, indefinitely," Wu Jin replied. "But your expedition created a massive psychic beacon that attracted their attention. 500 ships with diverse crews from multiple species. It's exactly the kind of signal that helps them locate weak points in our containment. The irony was devastating. The galaxy's greatest cooperative effort had become the thing that might destroy them all. Captain Yuki's remaining ships tried to withdraw from the danger zone, but space around them had become unstable. Navigation was impossible when the concept of direction kept changing. Several vessels found themselves traveling backward through time, emerging from jumps before they had begun them. "We need to evacuate the expedition immediately," Admiral Taemin said. "Get them away from the containment breach." "It's too late for that," Captain Wu Jin replied grimly. "The Devourers have locked onto your fleet's psychic signature. Even if we could get you out of human space, they would follow that signal back to the rest of the galaxy." The implications were clear. The expedition had become a beacon for humanity's greatest enemies. As long as the alien fleet existed, the Devourers would have a path to follow into the populated regions of the galaxy. Commander Nari understood. First, "You're saying we can't leave?" "I'm saying that leaving now would doom every inhabited world in the galaxy," Wu Jin confirmed. "The Devourers are patient. They'll follow your trail through hyperspace, consuming everything they encounter along the way. By the time they reach the galactic core, there won't be any civilizations left to warn." Around the expedition, human forces began deploying weapons and technologies that operated on principles the alien crews had never imagined. They weren't fighting the Devourers with energy beams or kinetic projectiles. Instead, they were manipulating the fundamental structures of reality itself, creating new laws of physics in local regions of space. The battle that was beginning wouldn't be fought with conventional tactics. It would be a struggle to determine what was real and what was possible, with the fate of every living thing in the galaxy hanging in the balance. And at the center of it all, 500 alien ships found themselves trapped in a war between forces so vast that their very existence had become a weapon that could either save the galaxy or destroy it. In the aftermath of the battle, a deep silence settled over the expedition fleet. The impossible structures of the Aegis Protocol slowly faded back into their hidden dimensions, leaving only normal space and distant stars. But nothing would ever be normal again for the aliens who had witnessed humanity's secret war. A new human ship approached the expedition, its design similar to Captain Wu Jin's vessel but somehow different. Older, more weathered by battles the alien commanders couldn't imagine. The captain who appeared on their communication screens was a young woman with tired eyes that seemed far too old for her face. "I am Captain Mi Young of the defense vessel Eternal Watch," she said. "I've been sent to escort you back to the edge of human territory." Admiral Taemin found his voice first. "Captain Wu Jin, did he and his crew completed their mission," Mi Young replied simply. "They're part of the containment now, keeping the Devourers locked away from our reality. It's what they chose to do." The words hit the alien commanders like physical blows. They had come to human space expecting to find hidden weapons or secret resources. Instead, they had discovered a species that routinely sacrificed everything to protect strangers who didn't even know they were in danger. "How long has this been going on?" General Su Young asked, her warrior's voice thick with emotion. Captain Mi Young was quiet for a moment, as if calculating something in her head. "Humanity first detected the Devourers 317 years ago," she said finally. "We've been preparing for this war ever since. The closed borders, the territory claims, the refusal to trade or cooperate with other species, everything we've done has been focused on building and maintaining the Aegis Protocol." Commander Nari felt sick as the implications became clear. Your entire civilization, your whole culture, it's all built around fighting these things? Not fighting them, Mi-young corrected gently, containing them. Fighting implies we might win someday. The Devourers are eternal. They existed before the universe began, and they'll exist after it ends. All we can do is hold them back for as long as possible. As the expedition began its journey back to the border of human space, Captain Mi-young shared more of the truth that humanity had carried alone for centuries. Every human colony was built around monitoring stations. Every human city was designed to be evacuated at a moment's notice. Every human child grew up knowing they might someday be called upon to sacrifice their life for the greater good. But how did you know? Captain Yuki asked. How did humanity discover the Devourers when older, more advanced species never detected them? Mi-young's expression grew sad. Because we were unlucky enough to develop faster than light travel in a region where the barriers between realities were thin. Our first attempts at interstellar exploration accidentally punched holes in space-time, and that's when the Devourers noticed us. The story she told was heartbreaking. Humanity's early space colonies had been consumed one by one as the Devourers tested their strength against a new species. Entire worlds had simply ceased to exist, their populations erased from history so completely that even the records of their existence were destroyed. We lost our first colony world, New Earth, when I was a child, Mi-young continued. One day, it was there. 3 billion people living normal lives. The next day, it had never existed at all. The only reason we remember it is because some of our people were off-world when the Devourers consumed it. Admiral Taman struggled to process the horror of what she was describing. How many worlds did you lose? 47 colonies, Mi-young replied. Over 10 billion people erased from existence as if they had never been born. It took us nearly a century to understand what we were facing and develop the technology to fight back. The development of the Aegis Protocol had required humanity to completely reshape their civilization. Traditional concepts like individual freedom and personal ambition had been replaced by collective responsibility and species-wide purpose. Every human alive understood that their personal desires were meaningless compared to maintaining the containment. Do your people ever regret the sacrifice? Commander Nari asked. Captain Mi-young considered the question carefully. Regret implies we had a choice, she said finally. When you discover that your species' existence has attracted the attention of entities that could destroy all life in the galaxy, what choice do you have? We could have tried to run, I suppose, or hoped someone else would solve the problem. But that would have meant abandoning billions of innocent beings to a fate worse than death. As they approached the edge of human territory, the expedition commanders faced an impossible decision. The truth about humanity's sacrifice was too important to keep secret, but it was also too dangerous to reveal. Knowledge of the Devourers could drive entire civilizations to despair, or worse, attract the entity's attention to populated worlds. What do we tell the Galactic Council? General Su-young asked. That depends on what kind of leaders you want to be, Captain Mi-young replied. You can tell them the truth and watch as panic spreads throughout the galaxy. You can lie and pretend nothing happened here. Or you can find a third option. Admiral Taman understood what she meant. We tell them enough to ensure they stay away from human territory, but not enough to cause galaxy-wide panic. That's what Ambassador Lee has been trying to do for 50 years. Mi-young confirmed, protecting the galaxy from both the Devourers and from knowledge of the Devourers. It's not easy, but it's necessary. The expedition crossed back into normal galactic space, leaving the red-marked quarantine zone behind them. but they carried with them a secret that would change everything they thought they knew about the universe. 3 months later, the Galactic Council convened to hear the expedition's report. The alien commanders stood before thousands of representatives from hundreds of species, knowing that their words would shape galactic policy for generations to come. The human territory contains defensive installations of unprecedented sophistication, Admiral Taemin reported, choosing his words carefully. These defenses are designed to protect not just human space, but the entire galaxy from threats that exist beyond our current understanding. Captain Yuki stepped forward. We recommend that the quarantine zone around human territory be expanded and reinforced. Any attempt to enter human space without explicit permission should be considered an act that endangers all life in the galaxy. Commander, Nari addressed the telepathic species directly. There are forms of consciousness in the universe that are harmful to mental contact. Human space serves as a buffer zone against these influences. For the safety of all telepathic beings, we must respect their boundaries. General Su Young's words carried the weight of a warrior's honor. Humanity has chosen to bear a burden that protects us all. The least we can do is respect their sacrifice by honoring their territorial claims without question. The Council voted unanimously to strengthen the restrictions around human space. No species would be permitted to approach the boundaries without approval from the human government. Trade routes would be adjusted to avoid the quarantine zone entirely. And most importantly, any investigation into human activities would be considered a crime against galactic security. Ambassador Lee Jun-ho sat quietly in his corner of the Great Hall, listening as the new policies were announced. When the session ended, he approached the 4 expedition commanders privately. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what?" asked Captain Yuki. "For understanding that some truths are too dangerous to share," Lee replied. "And for understanding that humanity's isolation isn't arrogance or fear. It's love. Years passed, and the galaxy continued to prosper under the protection of guardians it would never fully understand." The expedition commanders returned to their duties, but they were changed by what they had seen. They became the galaxy's secret protectors, watching for signs of other threats and ensuring that certain dangerous questions were never asked. And in the depths of human space, the Aegis Protocol continued its eternal vigil. Men and women like Captain Mi Young stood watch over barriers that contained horrors beyond imagination, knowing that their sacrifice would never be recognized or rewarded. But sometimes late at night when the galaxy slept peacefully under distant stars, they would look out at the lights of alien worlds and know that their burden had meaning. Somewhere out there, beings they would never meet were living lives free from fear, protected by guardians they would never know existed. And that was enough. It had always been enough. The galaxy was safe, and humanity would make sure it stayed that way, no matter the cost.